Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to do the weekly metagame breakdown for the historic best of 3 format. Let's see what's happening in the format since the release of Dragons of Tarkir, Dragonstorm, Dragons. But the most notable card that's kind of influenced the format is the new Ugin, Eye of the Storm. It's still a little bit early in terms of some of these Eternal formats for best of 3. Sometimes takes a couple weeks to get like huge amounts of data, so some of the win rates might be a little inflated because they're a bit small sample size, but I want to show some decks people are doing well with, or just some ideas, things that people are trying out. So we normally cover the popularity of the day. If you look at, say, best of 1, we can do the trending, but best of 3 sometimes is a little bit slower to load, so we won't be doing that today, unfortunately. We're getting the data from UntapGG, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, aggregates users' win rates, gives us a whole bunch of cool data. A link for Untapped, if you want to use it, is below in the video description. You can also track your own games played, and then I'll paste and timestamp these decks as well. So certain decks, like the food decks, like the Samwise food deck, like the Jeskai Lotus decks, those decks are pretty much the same. The Woodlands decks, so I'm not going to go like too detailed on those. They are what they are. You can look at any of my Aether Hub to find those lists. I want to just kind of cover either some like super high win rate decks or just updates or things people are trying out in lieu. So we are looking April 8th through the 23rd, 8,300 games played of down to Mythic rank. So Boros Energy is the highest win rate deck, 95%, only 20 games. This is largely from like one person. I saw them post, I think I was on Reddit or Twitter. But kind of an interesting variation of the deck. So while you obviously have the Bombardment, Amped Raptor, Ajani, Guide of Souls package, number of like one-ofs and interesting choices. I honestly surprised it's working this well. Just playing a bunch of X1s in a format of Goblin Bombardment seems ambitious, but it seems to be working for this. And what we have is Esper Sentinel in here. Obviously attacks 1 Kellen, 1 Kynthian as a flip card. Ruby Collector with the Go Wide approach lets you conjure Mox Ruby, and then as a mana sink, you have Stadium Headliner, which makes creatures and then can be flung at your opponent's creatures for 2 mana to kill something. And then Voice of Victory gets around control, like counter spells, instant speed removal, makes more tokens. Now, notably, these creatures are tapped and attacking, so it wouldn't trigger Ruby because this needs to be attacking. So that's kind of a weird instance there. Thalia's attacks effect. You're playing some number of non-creatures, not a huge amount, so your curve is still pretty low. You have Fragment as cheap removal on your sideboard, Lurrus Companion, Needle for activate ability, Prismatic Ending as flexible removal, Guide of Soul, Graveyard Hate. Then you have Sacrifice Hate with Stone of Erich, Containment Priest, anything looking to cheat into play, Sorin Alenda decks, Invasion as Hand Hate, Remorseful Cleric as Graveyard Hate, Wear Tear for Artifact Enchantment Hate. Boros Auras, just going to list it here, just given that it's consistently one of the highest win rate decks. The big kind of flux that you'll see between lists is whether the Amped Raptor's main or the Hushbringer. There's a lot of ETB style effects, then put the Hushbringer in main. Otherwise, if the meta is fairly grindy, then you play the Amped Raptor because it's kind of virtual card advantage, letting you cast a free spell. We've covered this time and time again. Light Pause, Spirit Dancer, both take advantage of playing a bunch of auras, either toolbox or draws you a bunch of cards, makes a big creature, protect it, smash into your opponent, kill them. This is kind of like my go-to deck for climbing in Historic. Very fast, linear, especially in best of 1. Graveyard Hate, cheap removal, protection effects, activated abilities, ETB Hate in your sideboard. Very clean sideboard. We have Azorius Affinity. So there's always kind of an affinity deck hanging around, just depending on what color combination supplements the blue. So you have your Tamiyo, Emery, Mox package like we have in Modern, Retrofitter Foundry, Ornithopter combo. This version's playing Moonsnare Prototype as kind of a card advantage, or ramp, as well as bounce. You have Thought Monitor and Thought Cast that both draw you a bunch of extra cards, with Affinity being as little as 1 mana. And then Kappa Cannoneer is your big payoff, make things unblockable, or make it unblockable, smash huge amounts of damage to your opponent. The white in the main board is for Portable Hole, removal that can then add to Affinity or tap for Improvise. Sideboard Karn, any sort of artifact decks at your opponent's side. So not really doing the toolboxy thing necessarily, while you can have sideboard artifacts. more just as a static hate piece, I would say. Graveyard Hate, cheap counter for instant or sorcery, any sort of combo stuff. Get Losses Removal, Strict Serenade as a flexible counter spell, like a Swan Song. Stone of Erich, like we mentioned, anything with like the sacrifice decks, death triggers, really good into energy. Stern Scolding, cheap counters, Spell Pierce, cheap disruption, activated abilities. Aether Spellbomb's pretty good against auras, gets around a lot of the common protection, and can bounce the creature, kind of reset them that way there. The first of our Ugin decks, we have Simic Eldrazi. So this is a deck Nick Talks was playing a lot, Portuguese content creator. So you got your Karn package, which we see by the sideboard of one-ofs. You have your big Eldrazi's, full Eye of the Storm Ugin. You have one of the OG Ugins. This just kind of takes over the game, exiling a bunch of stuff. You can have early ramp into it with Ugin's Labyrinth. You have then just a bunch of Eldrazi. Ulamog on the top end, Devourer of Destinies helps you set up your Ugin's Labyrinth. Null Drifter draws you cards. Sowing Mycos Spawn helps you ramp and blows up your opponent's lands. Ugin's Bindings, kind of a Cyclonic Rift-esque effect. Utopia Sprawl, Malevolent Rumble, Mind Stone all help you ramp. And then Kozilek's Command as a way to just kind of flexible. It could be Graveyard Hate, can be card draw, could be removal, can make you a bunch of tokens to ramp. You have some utility lands through the deck since Mycos Spawn could tutor. Shifting Woodlands can reanimate stuff from the graveyard. You have Phyrexian Scrapyard that can create, basically hit you extra line drops or create Soul New Phyrexia. Blast Zone is removal, Cavern for uncounterable. Sideboard, Treasure Vault can be tutored with Karn if you need mana. Similar to Mono Blue or Mono Green, you have Portal, Cityscape Lovers with top end. God Pharaohs can reanimate your Eldrazi, particularly the combo with Ulamog the Defiler if it's in your graveyard. Will allow you to haste it out and annihilate that same turn. Forsaken Monument for ramp, life gain, card draw, removal, ETB hate, combo hate, blow up their lands, turn off activated abilities, sacrifice hate, activated abilities hate, enchantment, artifact hate, graveyard hate, and then cheap spells. You can lock them out with Chalice of the Void. We then go to Orzhov Sorin, or kind of Blink S deck. So you have Overlord of the Baelmark that helps digs you into the Sorin Alenda combo. Then you have Dedicated Dollmaker that could blink a bunch of your stuff, gets you some value. You have Juggernaut Peddler for hand hate. Emperor of Bones can reanimate some of your big threats or just get some value off ETB. Felia blinks your stuff so you get value. White Orchard Phantom can blow up your opponent's lands. A lot of the decks are somewhat greedy at times, so you can blow up key lands. Thoughtseize, Sand Hate, Fragment. Then you have what's cool, these MDFCs. These can be hit off Overlord, so you kind of get the value there as well. Elish Norn for ETBs. Toxic Delusion Sweeper, Archon of Myria against like Lotus Field, anything playing a lot of spells per turn. Shieldred's Edict, Flexible Removal, Break Expectations, just hand hate style effects. Then have Mardu Sacrifice. So the one thing I want to kind of highlight, they're playing Voice of Victory. This deck's been pretty established at this point. Bunch of creatures that make like either tokens, you sacrifice for value, you drain them out with Marionette's Apprentice, Bombardment to ping them. Voice Victory allows you to get multiple creatures per turn, and it has kind of that silence effect that your opponent can't interact. Allows you to kind of generate a Johnny and then flip it the same, which can be fairly useful. Your sideboard, activated abilities, cheap removal, prismatic ending, flexible removal, sacrifice for the mirror, graveyard hate, hand hate, and flexible removal. So we're kind of going quick. It's just more kind of grouping what the sideboard cards would look like. So we have an Abzan version of the Sorin combo, so very similar to what we just highlighted. They have some Vein Rippers on the top end. In green, you get access to Oath of Nissa. That's kind of a green cantrip-esque effect that helps you either hit lands or your key permanents for the combo. Malevolent Rumble does a similar idea, milling you over, and then it also feeds the Emperor of Bone package. You have some Toxic Delusion to main, Fatal Push, Thoughtseize kind of mixed into there as well. Sideboard, Culling Ritual is very good into all the Luris piles, auras, stuff of that nature. Hand Hate with Juggernaut Peddler, Dampening Sphere for like Mono Green Devotion, anything playing a lot of spells per turn. Abrupt Decay, Flexible Removal. Stone of Erich, as we mentioned. A lot of these cards are kind of flexible, especially the colorless ones. You'll see them across a lot of different decks. We then have Gruul Eldrazi, so another Ugin of the Storm. We have Kami and Utopia Sprawl to help you ramp. You have some land destruction with Stone Rain. You have Sowing Myco Spawn for some more land destruction. Rithing Chrysalis helps you ramp. Kozilek's Return as a sweeper that can then be flashed back from your graveyard just to deal more damage that way there. Sorry about the dog. There was a dog walking by, and my dog had to defend the property. Ugins, you have Emrakul's on the top end, so just kind of a land destruction Eldrazi kind of style strategy. A lot of the similar ideas with the lands that help you ramp. Dismember is removal, whether Runestone gets around like things being cast from the library or cheated into play. ETB hate, since a lot of your stuff is cast trigger. Combo hate, sweepers. Again, kind of Pithing Needle-esque effect, Graveyard hate, and Artifact Enchantment hate. We have Selesnya Devotion. So we've seen these variations before, but this one's kind of interesting. You have Verdant Dread. So it comes into play whenever it or another permanent you control named Verdant Dread enters, you manifest Dread, and then you can conjure a copy of it into play. So you can just keep making more and more. It's a good mana sink to go wide. You also have Bloodvine Regen, just a way to gain some life. Also helps you hit your line drops early. Elish Norn doubles ETB. 6 lets you play stuff from your graveyard. Grizzle Huntmaster, basically discard a creature and then tutor a creature from your sideboard. So you can hit like your Cityscape Leveler. Wingbane Ventusaur can give you Stomp or Naturalize into your hand. You have Phyrexian Metamorph that could copy stuff. Haywire Might, so kind of a tutor package for creatures. And then obviously you have your Karn board for the other artifacts in here. Basically just situational cards. As when needed, you generate a whole bunch of mana with Nykthos, Storm the Festival, go to town, win that way there. Moving on, we go to Esper midrange, so 20 different flavors of Sorin Elenda. So Sorin Elenda, but this has the Emperor of Bones Ulamog combo. So with Ulamog in your graveyard, Emperor of Bones exiles it. You have to go into full control if you want to do it all in the same attack cycle. Comes into play, it sees itself in exile, gets haste, so you immediately annihilate their board. You can set it up with Psychic Frog to discard the Ulamog, or use Diviner Fate with Psychic Frog. Basically, whenever you discard once per turn, you seek a card of the same type. So it basically allows you to curate your hand. You discard with Psychic Frog. Normally that's a disadvantage because you're losing a card, but in this case here, it just nets you another card from your library. In terms of, that's pretty much what the blue cards add to the deck. Another Ulamog for kind of the mirrors. Just decks like slower decks, linear decks, you can just go over the top. Lockdown for the Luris piles. Juggernaut Peddler for hand hate. Activated abilities, hand hate. Stone for the sack decks, Fragment as cheap removal. Then we have Gruul Creativity, so another Ugin deck. So a couple different ways to showcase Ugin. This version here is using Indomitable Creativity with tokens to make it so you always hit Sire of 7 Deaths as your target. You can also hardcast with Ironcrag Feed, that just helps you accelerate on your mana. Strike It Rich makes you tokens. You have Wish Good Luck, a new alchemy card. You create a food token, tap treasure token, and a colorless vehicle token. So it makes you 3 tokens. One of them can help you ramp with the creativity. You have Cursed Idol, destroys an artifact, destroys an enchantment, or you get a treasure token and venture into the dungeon. Another just bunch of ways to make tokens. Relics of the Rubble Belt lets you get signets, and then gets you just the ramp, and then the signets can also be targeted with creativity. Your sideboard, Graveyard Hate, Vampire's Vengeance as a sweeper. You have Rending Volley, blue and white stuff, and then Maddening Hex. Basically, whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you roll a d20 or a d6. D6, not a d20. You can't one-shot them. And it allows you to deal damage to them. So it's cool against like the control decks when they want to counter something. Well, they can take upwards of 6 damage. Then we have Izzet Wizards. So this deck here, just an update. We're seeing some copies of Cori-steel Cutter in the deck. So Cori-steel is taking over a number of formats. I do think this card can be quite relevant. It's just finding the shell that works best for it in the format. But playing 2 spells per turn gets you prowess tokens. Otherwise, it's pretty much the wizard shell. We're seeing some bolt waves, a little bit more aggressive of a version, fewer copies of Flame of Anor in it instead, but your regular wizard package. Otherwise, Pyroclasm, cheap sweepers, Aether Gust, red green hate, Graveyard hate, Sacrifice hate, cheap disruption, cheap removal, activated ability. And then lastly, this list is from Leib's 1239. They went 39 and 17 into Mythic. So this is another version of a Cori-steel deck that really kind of jumped out to me. You have Cori-steel, you have Unstable Amulet, as well as Reckless Impulse, all ways to get extra cards. Amped Raptor on its own could trigger the Cori-steel, which is cool. You have the Ornithopter, as well as Retrofitter Foundry combo. These are just cheap spells that can trigger Cori-steel. So even on turn 2, you can cast Cori-steel and a 0-drop, and then get that immediate ability. You have kind of an energy sub-theme. Galvanic Blast deals 2 damage to any target, but can deal 4 if you control 3 or more artifacts. So that's kind of a cool one there. And then I wouldn't play Aether. This one maybe because you have Unstable Amulet, so it gives you some more. I generally don't like Aether Hub in the Luris ones because it screws up your mana base. Could be something you try out, but Faithful Absence should probably just be Get Lost, I would say. You have Crystal Barricade if you run into Belcher, anything targeting you with Burn or Hand Hate, stuff like that. Cleansing Wirefire can deal with non-basic lands, Nykthos, stuff of that nature. You could probably just run like, it's fine, I guess. Static Prison, you could run Alpine Moon instead, for example. Same, because this Alpine Moon will hit Lotus Fields. Static Prison, cheap removal, activated abilities, Fragment is cheap removal, Dusk Rose Reliquary, you have a bunch of cheap fodder that you can sacrifice to it as well. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.